Taxation is theft.
Please, at least leave us alone in our living room.
My job is to find the truth.
Double the taxes. I'm a human being. God damn it! My life has value. Triple the taxes.
This is an IRS agent's dream.
If you think that the Capitol will ever treat us fairly, you are lying to yourself.
Beautiful, lovely taxes.
Sorry, but I don't do taxes.
Did you see the memo about this?
The government is a greedy piglet.
Just leave us alone.
Do you know what Ralph just said?
The roads. You boys like Mexico? I'm as bad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore.
Hey, what's going on, guys? We are back. Taxation is theft. As always, I have a very awesome guest with me today, but first I just want to make a couple announcements. Taxationistheft.info. If you are looking for ways to not pay taxes, that's the best place to start. We got all kinds of awesome information over there for you. Taxationistheft.cards if you want to get your swag. We got t-shirts, we got hats, and we have this awesome little stamp that you can use to stamp on all of your bills, so whenever you spend your money around, it's floating around that, hey, taxation is theft. If you're listening to the podcast, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can go check us out. We're on youtube.com/taxationistheft, and also on taxationistheft.info. You can get to the podcast. We are in iTunes and a bunch of other places. Anyway, that's really all I got. I'd like to introduce Brian Ellison. How's it going, Brian?
Good. How are you, Dan?
I'm doing pretty awesome. So, of course, this is the first time I've had you on since the last time that I've had you on.
Yeah, that's a strange coincidence how that works.
I don't know. It just always works out that way. And I actually have your campaign, your purple campaign shirt on. I know you can't see me right now because you're on your cell phone, but this actually goes really well with the yellow hat. I gotta say, it's Laker colors if we have any Lakers fans, but I don't think Californians are interested in getting rid of taxes, so probably not. Welcome. How you been?
I've been a combination of busy. Well, I'm happy to get through the holidays. Let's put it that way. No, busy. Like I've been staying busy without feeling like I've been accomplishing much. So it's a really strange feeling.
Yeah.
But you know,
I've been there.
Luckily, we got through the holidays. I have some. I got through a bunch of hurdles with some of my court cases, and obviously there's more stuff coming up. But doing remarkably well, despite the state's best efforts to keep me down here.
So there's a lot to talk about. There's the game you have that just came out. There's, I think, the awesome wristband that I just saw when you had your hands up. There's and then there's, of course, you've got some court cases that are still going on. Let's start this out this way. I'm gonna ask, and I expect the answer to be related to your work in the field of law enforcement prevention. Why do you hate taxes so much?
I mean, why do I hate taxes so much? Because it's theft. Because it's taking money from us without our consent to spend it on things that we don't want to spend it on. I mean, and fundamentally, one of the things that it's spent on is propping up a corrupt system that seems like it's broken, but it's not really broken because it's designed to function this way, where it's just used to essentially exploit the underclass. And so, that's one of the fundamental flaws of a system that is propped up by taxation. Is it takes taxes from the same people that it oppresses. So, yeah, that's kind of the basis on why I hate taxes.
Yeah, it's kind of like, especially with, with law enforcement that you deal with in your job, it's like they take your money to pay people to take your money.
That's exactly it. And then after they take your money through taxation, then these same people that you're paying come after you and take your money in any number of other ways.
Yeah, And then of course you have, it's almost like a lottery system at that point where it's like, oh, well, we all paid into the system for our protection, and you did something that the lords did not approve of, and so that's why you're paying the additional tax. It's not because you fell upon bad luck. It's not because you pulled the wrong lottery ticket. It's just something that you did. It's your fault.
Right.
It's an interesting system that they have, and they really have a lot of people buying into it. But so let's talk about more of your work, because you're kind of you've spent a lot of time kind of on the front line of this, trying to keep some of these let's call them part-time tax collectors and part-time policy enforcers. You've been trying to keep them in check so that they're not, running around getting away with all the corrupt stuff that they normally do. What's going on there? What's happened with that lately?
So I have the two cases. So I have the arrests from June, which was my I was arrested once a year. That's a whole nother shit. So in June was the first protest arrest, and then I was arrested again in August, and towards the end of August in the same city for essentially the same thing, very similar charges in both cases. And those cases are both pending. They're scheduled for trial a month from now. So it's January 28th will be the trial. And I'm actually looking at trying to adjourn that trial and delay it. I do have an attorney who's offered to help, to come in from out of town, in fact, to help. And so in order to get enough preparation and travel plans and have a more firm trial date, we're asking to push it out a little bit. So that's those cases. I also have I just got notice. I had last week a pre-conference or I can't remember exactly the term that they used for it, but I had traffic.
Probably.
Yeah, it's a little bit different because it's traffic court, but it's a pre-hearing. I mean, the whole concept of it is to try and settle the case. It was a complete waste of time because nobody's interested in settling my case. And so, but I got through that last week. And so I have a trial date for that now. I think it's the 30th or 31st. So I've got a jury trial scheduled, 2 jury trials scheduled for the 28th of January and 2 bench trials set for like the 30th or 31st of January. So that's going to be a busy week.
Interesting.
But they won't go. The bench trials will go. It's just simple traffic tickets. But I doubt that the jury trials will actually go on those dates. And it's a weird system where they set up 2 trials on the same date, knowing that you can't have 2 trials on the same date with the same parties in front of the same judge. It's just not possible. So, but that doesn't stop them from scheduling them. So they'll schedule them, and then you'll have to prepare for the trial, and then one could get bumped, and you don't know which one it's going to be. And so it's just another way for them to really they kind of put a burden on both parties. So you can't even say that it's the state that does it. It's the court that does it out of their convenience. And then the parties just have to be prepared, even though they know that one of them's not going to go. So I do have those going. And then I have another case that is this one was somewhat unplanned, unexpected. I had but probably a lot of people have questions about this. There's been a lot of rumors and some poor reporting about it, but I did plead to assault for pulling earbuds out of my wife's ear, and I started my probation this last month. So I got 11 more months of probation on that, with some really interesting additions to standard probation terms. They put in a lot of language in my probation about not following cops, not interfering with law enforcement, which obviously that's already a crime, so I don't know why it needs to be a probation condition. But I guess maybe because it's easier to violate on probation than it is to convict you of a crime. So I guess that's why they did it.
Yeah, and they can usually extend the penalties for it too. They can exaggerate them.
Right, exactly. So they with the 12-month probation. So I agreed to this plea deal because they said we're going to recommend 6 months probation. And it's through a special statute that allows for first-time offenders to have the record expunged. So right now, there's nothing on my record right now. And as long as I complete my probation, then it'll never be on my record. And so I was like, well, it was hard for me to say, okay, for 6 months, I'm going to, play nice with the police, and I'm not going to harass the government. Not that I was ever harassing them, but, I'm not going to, do anything to cause any troubles. I just want to get through this probation. And then when I went to the hearing for the sentencing, they recommended 18 months. And on top of that, recommending 18 months, they had all these weird conditions and also recommended a psychological evaluation. So we have to go get tested to see how crazy I am, see if the government can judge me mentally ill for some reason. And if that's the case, then obviously there's other things that go along with that, and restrictions on purchasing weapons and things like that, which I think would be a great win for the state. So I ended up with 12 months of that, and like I said, I have 11 months left to go. So it just, when I was weighing my options and what to do with that, whether to fight it or not, ultimately what it comes down to is it's a simple assault. I committed a simple assault. There's no two ways around it. You can't take earbuds out of somebody's ear and accidentally scratch their face in the process. That's the basics of an assault. And so if I would have gone to trial, I would have lost, frankly. And so I took the deal, tried to get it behind me. And when the state has it out for you, that's probably a case that probably would not have got prosecuted for 95% of the population. But when they can have somebody like me in front of them, when they can arrest me before there's even been a victim complaint, a formal complaint filed, they're going to do whatever they can. And so I just wanted to try and get that behind me as quick as possible. So that's well underway. And I'm in the process of trying to schedule my psychological evaluation. So, hey, I'm really looking forward to that. I get to pay some sort of doctor to vouch for the state and that I'm messing on. It's exciting times to be alive.
Yeah, that really is nuts. And of course, you kind of have to worry that anything that you say it can be stretched into, I don't think the government should have the right, or I don't think the government does have the right to go around harassing its citizens. And all of a sudden they can twist that into, well, he's delusional about what the purpose of government is. And, they can, it's really something scary, because I don't think that's, I think that's something that, just like you were talking about, an indictment that the state, if they really don't like you, they can twist it and turn it into something bigger than it really is. They can do the same with a psych evaluation. That's actually kind of scary, but it sounds like you're not too worried about it. So that's also really awesome, because I know, just the stress factor is that can hurt. And that's actually a funny one, because the when you're being arrested and that the arrest is wrong, and that you're being assaulted by a police force for standing up for what's right, you're being violated, you're being attacked, you're being assaulted, and your first instinct is to panic. Oh my God, what's going to happen? If they're breaking the law, they might just kill me. They're armed. They're taking me to a place where I'm not going to be able to talk to anybody outside, any of my friends, my lawyer, until they give me permission to use the phone. It is a situation that a lot of people are going to panic in. And then, of course, when you panic, you resist, because that's your primal instinct to do it. And then they twist that around. Oh, he's resisting. He's and now that becomes a crime against the police. Your natural instincts to protect yourself become a crime because of the state that they put you in for when they were violating your rights. So that's another really I guess, well, you're probably more of an expert in this. I've been arrested a couple times in that circumstance too. But would you say that one of the most important things when you're being wrongfully arrested is to keep cool?
Yeah. Yes. And I learned that, and when I was arrested in June, I did resist, and it would be considered passive resistance, where I was, I just was kind of locking up, and I wasn't really pulling away or trying to get away, but I was, telling him, get your hands off me, and slightly resisting, because yeah, like you said, here I am being assaulted, literally assaulted by these officers without provocation, without cause, and incidentally, all of my charges were essentially charges that stem from an initial police contact. So they charged me with attempted obstructing government operations, the government operations being the police, I suppose. They charged me with interfering with a peace officer and 2 counts of resisting arrest. Every single one of those charges is a charge based on an interaction with a law enforcement officer. The law enforcement officer is not there. There's no charges. There's no fundamental base charge that, hey, I violated this law, and that's where all these charges stemmed from. They all stemmed from the police approaching me and wanting me to stop doing what I was doing, even though it wasn't illegal, and that it ended up with me being arrested and charged with 4 crimes. So yeah, I mean, that's fundamentally my reaction was like, what are you doing? Get your hands off me. You can't touch me. This, you don't have any reason to arrest me. And but at the end of the day, after you're charged, those charges can stick, and the resisting can really add complicating factors when you're going to trial. And so I think it's really important, even though a resisting arrest, at least in the state of Michigan, is lawful. When it's an unlawful arrest, it still adds complicating factors. And so I would say keeping your cool and, complying as hard as it is to comply and just, kind of go with the flow once you understand you're being arrested. I think that would be my advice to anybody who finds themselves in that situation, is just try and relax. Just, be as peaceful and compliant as you can be. Certainly okay to be verbally combative. I mean, that's what I did. But at the same time, while being cordial, like, hey, why are you arresting me? Why asking questions, but with still being compliant, physically compliant. And I think that's important. And I think I find myself maybe in a different position than some people. Some people, if they were in my position, and likely based on the color of their skin, they may have been subjected to much more violence than I was. And frankly, if it wasn't, where I was arrested in kind of a public forum on Facebook Live, I would see that there would be a risk for somebody who could have ended up, dead or seriously injured in that circumstance. So I would say that despite the fact that it's in your instinct to resist and to try and fight an unlawful arrest, I think that my advice would be to just try your best to go along with it and deal with it on the back end. Right.
Yeah, and I know that's like, that's an ongoing debate whether you should just, comply or whether you should resist if it's an unlawful arrest. Especially because we've seen footage of, police body cams, someone completely trying to comply and still getting shot or still getting beat up. And so it's hard to say that that's the right thing to do, but at the same time, it's kind of like, if let's take that one situation where somebody complied completely and they still got shot. If they would have resisted, they still would have been shot, but it would have been even harder to prosecute the police. Now it's kind of hard to say, like, well, hey, just take one for the team. Like, yeah, you're gonna die, but hey, at least they're gonna give that cop his vacation's gonna be not paid versus a paid vacation. Or maybe he's going to get fired and have to go find another city to go work in as a police officer. Like, I mean, it sucks to say that, because that's realistically a lot of times that's what happens. It's, oh, well, I mistook his seatbelt for a gun. I understand. It's like, it's a really, I don't know. It's hard to give advice either way in that, because it's kind of like you're screwed either way. It's a shitty situation to be in.
It is. I mean, I agree 100%. Like, part of me is like, and I don't remember who I got this line from, but it's not original. But I don't want to, assist in my own kidnapping. I don't want to be a party to that. But at the same time, and especially, and with the arrest in August, I was armed at the time, and so I was open carrying. And so obviously, if I was to resist while I'm armed, obviously that's a much bigger danger. And you don't have to be an actual threat to anybody for the police officers to say, to be able to articulate that you were a threat. Well, he's armed and he wasn't complying and he could have reached for a gun. And so when you look at all the different circumstances and all the possibilities, ultimately your best bet when you're being taken into custody, because 9 times out of 10 you're going to be outnumbered, you just do your best to comply. I mean, you can't win that physical battle, and hopefully at some point, people who are willing to resist and stand up to tyranny will outnumber the police. I think that's kind of a hopeful goal that we all have. And when we come to that point, it might be a different story. At this point, we're all severely outnumbered, and ultimately, really, your best bet is to just go with it.
Right. Now, here's an interesting proposition too. This goes back to this. There was kind of a law that I was I guess proposing a few years back, which would basically, because here's the problem, right? You get you go up to a cop and you punch him in the face and you're going to jail, right? A cop comes up to you and he punches you in the face and nothing happens. And so it's kind of like, no matter what happens, you don't really, they say you get your day in court, but you never really do, because there are no consequences for that. And when you look at the laws and the way that the laws are written, and the laws are, they're operating instructions for government employees for the most part. They don't tell you that you can't punch a cop. They tell the government, hey, if someone punches a cop, this is what you get to do. You get to arrest them. You get to take them to a court. You have to give them a trial, but then you're allowed, if they lose the trial, then you're allowed to stick them in a concrete and steel cage for 30, 40, 50 years. But even though we have certain things in place that are supposed to protect us, like, for example, we have the First Amendment that says you have the right to free speech, which is pretty much what you were doing the first time you got arrested. If a police officer, if a government agent comes to you and he doesn't punch you in the face, instead he takes away your right to free speech by arresting you, taking away that right to say what you were saying, there is nothing in the all these millions of laws of government operational instructions that says when a police officer takes away your freedom of speech, this is how long you can stick him in jail, or you can use the system against itself to stick him in jail. That's just not there. There are some, like, I think it's like Section 1984 or something of the Civil Rights, which it kind of does that, but it's like so impossible to make that happen, especially because the police are able to just say, oh, well, I thought he was a threat. And that's just like kind of like, that's the trump card that says, oh, well, I didn't do anything wrong. It's like if you punch a cop in the face because he's not wearing a uniform and he has a knife in your face and you punch him in the face, you still punched a cop in the face and you're going to prison for 30 years. There is no, well, I mistook him for somebody who was trying to rob me at knife point. That's not an excuse that works for you. It's always it's always in the side of the police. So something that I'd like to see, if anything, in this system, in this list of instructions that the government has to operate, is something that says, hey, we need to start putting some of these cops in prison. And I know, every once in a while you hear something about it, but there's really compared to what a citizen has to do to end up in prison, a cop has to do 50 times worse. And they're supposed to know the law. They're supposed to be held to a higher standard. They're supposed to be trained in tense, high stress situations. They're supposed to be able to handle themselves better. So when they do these things, that consequence needs to be there, and it needs to be more prevalent than it is for us, in my opinion. But anyway, enough about that. So let's talk about this game you've got out now. So, and this game is kind of based on everything that you went through, right? So tell me about the game. What was the most motivating factor in getting this game made for you?
Well, we had it was shortly after my second, was it before or after? It was right around the time I was arrested the second time, the end of August. We were on a short conference call with a couple friends of mine, Desiree Lindsay and JC Cook, and just coming up with, we've got to find a way that we can, make a difference, reach a bigger audience, and do it at some way that we're not just, exposing ourselves to liability, but actually contributing something and potentially getting some money into the liberty movement. And so it was through that kind of fundamental concept, and there was some really basic strategy talks. And JC Cook, who is a genius on so many levels and comes up with a lot of basic, some great ideas, and fine tunes a lot of other ideas. He came up with the concept, and originally the concept was going to be Cops Against Humanity, and we were just going to play off this Cards Against Humanity, the same theme, but in the vein of just all law enforcement themed cards with the questions and the responses and everything. And it was through that basic concept that after Tyler Lindsay got involved, Tyler and JC had some really good strategy sessions and worked out some details, and they came out with the basic gameplay for what turns out to be it's a great game. The gameplay is fantastic, but it was one of Tyler's passions is game design, and so he brought that kind of experience and that knowledge to it, and they were able to come up with the nuts and bolts of this concept of a game that is not only fun to play, it's a good strategy game, but it also gets out the message that we want to get out about kind of exposing the reality behind law enforcement and hoping that we can reach a broader audience than, I think that probably most of your audience that listens to the show is probably on the same page as us. But we wanted to be able to get this message out to outside the circle that most of us exist in, certainly the circle we exist in online. And so this just turns out, again, with the gameplay and everything else, it's just a great way to reach out, to get in front of other people. And it's super fun to play. And I've played this game with family, with friends, with people inside the Liberty Movement, with people outside the Liberty Movement. And I haven't heard a bad review yet. Everybody thinks it's a blast. Even the people that we might call bootlickers. I mean, that's not my favorite term, but I think that it holds some merit. Even people who hold law enforcement up on a pedestal can still appreciate the game, appreciate the context of the writing in the game, and it's all very fairly laid out. There's nothing in the cards that is really kind of incendiary. It's really factually based. It's based on real scenarios, and it tells the message of what it is that law enforcement really is and what law enforcement really does. So a tremendous win from a tremendous team. And they, I luckily I've been able to be, I helped with some of the early strategizing and some of the fine tuning and finessing, and but ultimately, for the most part, what my part has been is getting to play the game, make the video, promote the game, talk to people like you about the game, and it's just been fantastic so far. So this was a true team effort, and if anybody has not seen the commercial, they need to check it out because we had a great video producer as well. And I don't know if you know who that is, but with this, just the work that we did and the product that we put out, I'm super proud of it.
Yeah, I mean, and I have to say, like, when I first heard about this project, I was like, I'm not into games, right? So I was like, okay, a card game, okay, that's cool, I guess. And then, when I was up in Detroit with you, or when Royal Oak, I guess, and you had the what do you call it? The demo version that, you were still working on the game. I got to play it, and it was actually really fun. And I have to say, it's probably it is the exact same experience I had with Cards Against Humanity, where like I saw that, and like I saw the ads for it when it first came out, and I was like, oh yeah, and I saw two cards next to each other, and I'm like, hey, that's pretty funny. But I was like, I'd never buy this game. I'd never that looks like nothing I would be into. And then, you know, a friend of mine brought the game over and I played it, Cards Against Humanity, and I was like, oh, wow, this is awesome. And like, I really had the same experience with the Thin Blue Line game, because it's like, for one, it was, you know, it was fun. It, you know, like you said, it didn't really, like, it wasn't there to attack the police. It was really just like, but it did have like, you know, little sources of information in there about like, oh yeah, this is really how they work, and holy shit, that is kind of fucked up. But it's not like sitting there like every time you flip a card over, it's like fuck the police. It's really, you know, so you know, like you said, you could have the bootlicker community playing this game. And maybe kind of like realizing like, yeah, this is bad, or because what's interesting is like with cops and their supporters. When I was campaigning for Texas House, I was giving out flyers all over the place, and there was this. I was campaigning outside of a out of a polling station, and there was this guy that came up to me, and I had this big sign that said, you know, stop police misconduct, and this guy, he looked like a horse. He was like jacked up on like so many tranquilizers. And he came over to me and he was just like, oh, stop police misconduct. Well, we're on opposite ends of the spectrum. And I was like, so you want more police misconduct? And he just
right.
like,
You know what I'm saying?
he was just like, he just turned around and kind of walked away. And like, so I know like, they kind of they don't have a distinction, because they know there's this thing like, hey, no, if you have to shoot somebody, hey, just say, you know, you got to make it home to your family. That's how they train them. So they don't really always make the distinction between actual misconduct and, oh shit, I fucked up. And so this kind of like brings to light in a fun way, like, hey, if you're one of these police, or if you've got police in your family and you know the shit's going on, you should at least like say, okay, yeah, that's kind of extreme and we shouldn't be doing that. So I think it's really an awesome way to bring that out. And so now this game is up for sale on the website, right? It's thinbluelinegame.com.
That's correct. Yes.
So, and you can watch the commercial over there. Yeah, so I'm reading through the comments right now. You should send the decks out to local schools, see if you can get a set of high school teams competing to be the most corrupt and ruthless force. And that was actually something really interesting about this game, was that the rules change. And from what I understand, in the final rule set, there's like an actual something about changing the rules in the game. Is that part of?
So there's like different variations. There's so in the I had been playing just the prototype deck, like you mentioned. That's what I had for a while, and frankly, I was making up some of the rules because that's something that we hadn't fully fleshed out. We had all the cards and everything, but we were working on fine tuning the rules for the best gameplay. And I got the actual deck last week, and got to actually see the actual cards and play with them and really kind of go over the rules, because I hadn't really gone over the rules with a fine-tooth comb to that point. And there's different variations, and aside from that is just, you know, we would encourage, and certainly I would encourage everybody, that when you get this game, to come up with your own rules. Like, that's part of what makes a gaming fun, I think, is when you have house rules and you tweak things a little bit to your liking and do things the way you want. But yeah, there's different variations you can play. When I was playing with my prototype deck, we would say whoever won the previous round and was the chief of police got to make another rule for the game, and we ended up with some interesting rules that just really made it more ruthless, which made it a little bit more and a little bit more realistic. So yeah, I think that I like the idea about taking it to schools. In fact, I think I'll probably send. I have a high school son. I'll probably send him to school with it and see what he comes back with. See how long it takes him to get suspended. But yeah, and like you said, I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm not a big gamer, and so when we came up with this idea, I was like, oh, it's gonna be neat, it's gonna be cool, you know, it'll have this cool message to it, and the messaging again is really really genius. The way it's put together, it's very, it's subtle without being too subtle, but it's not too harsh. So it really kind of toes that line of being just good messaging. And but yeah, when I mean playing it, it's like, man, it's a fun game. There's good strategy. It's not just some hokey game with some theme that we were trying to stick to. It really is a good game. And so yeah, anybody who hasn't done it, anybody who hasn't played it, anybody who hasn't ordered it, remember that right now we have a limited stock. We actually have we did pre-orders. Pre-orders were all filled last week, and we have a limited stock right now, ready to be shipped immediately. And so right now is the best time to order. Not that we won't be able to print more, because we certainly will. But if you want to get the game, I think you can order it today and get it inside of a week. You should order it today, and that's at thinbluelinegame.com.
Awesome. So yeah, if you wanna be one of the first people to get that game. So I see some people they want to ask some questions. If you want to ask some questions, just post questions in there, and we'll see if we can get some answered. Clayton Hunt is recommending Strip Thin Blue Line Game, not in schools, of course, or the Strip Search Edition. And actually, I think what's kind of ironic is the whole thing about changing the rules is really it's kind of what cops do, right? Like when they don't, like, well, he's not really doing anything illegal. Let me just tell him that what he's doing is illegal and see if he goes along with it. You're not supposed to do that. Well, right. What am I?
A bit of experience.
What's that?
I can have a little bit of experience with that.
Yeah. Like, what is it that I'm not supposed to be doing? That thing that you're doing there. You'll see it later when I put it in the police report. So yeah, so if you guys want to ask some questions, I'm kind of trying to keep an eye on this. So
I did a question up here, and let me scroll back up because I'm watching this too, but it's delayed for me, so it's kind of odd to watch it. But here it is from Latanya Whittington. I saw this a while ago, and she asked, she'd like to know what made me think I could resist at all. As a black woman in Texas, she can't think of doing that. She'd be another Sandra Bland. Please help me understand your thoughts. So I think that maybe fundamentally is a cultural question. And when, where I was brought up, and which is kind of ironic because it's the same place that has right now one of the highest rates of police murdering unarmed civilians in the country. It was a place where the cops, you just respect the cops, and the cops are the good guys, and the cops aren't there, they're there to help you. And so when you grow up in a community like that, you learn to become more comfortable with the police, and when you're not doing anything wrong, you feel like I'm not doing anything wrong. Nothing, why are they going to do anything to me? And so I think it kind of emboldens people to respond, and frankly, in the way that I responded. And I think that's really kind of a dangerous culture that we live in, because where, as Latanya points out, is that in the wrong circumstances, and again, even it could just be based on the color of your skin or the disposition of the officer you're dealing with, this is something that could be very dangerous, where if we think, okay, it's okay if we should resist because we know that they're doing wrong to us, and we can't let somebody do something wrong to us. That's how people get killed, and she's right. And so what made me think that? I think that it was really just kind of more of my cultural upbringing, and the fact that I have a very low tolerance for people who are committing injustices, and that's exactly what was happening to me at the time. And so I think that, again, it was a learning experience for me, and I think I was lucky in the end that I didn't have to learn the hard way, and that I did have an opportunity to learn. And so, again, I would encourage people that, do your best to not resist. And even in some cases, when somebody's beating the hell out of you and they're saying don't resist, and you're really just kind of covering, that's a different story. I mean, you're trying to protect yourself and preserve your life. That's a different story. But when you don't have to resist, I would recommend not resisting. And I was lucky, and I think that in different circumstances and with different people, perhaps it could have ended much differently for me. So hopefully that answers your question, Latanya.
Yeah, it's man, there's so much to that. I mean, there was this. I don't remember. I think it was like a city that was, or maybe a state that wanted to include in their high school curriculum to train people how to interact with police officers. And it's like, no, like we don't need to be trained. You know, when we're not in the wrong, we shouldn't have to be trained. But the reality is, I mean, we kind of do to some degree. Like we should learn, you know, like as we're kids, we learn it's wrong to steal, it's wrong to murder, it's all these other things. We should also maybe learn like it's wrong to escalate things when it doesn't need to be, especially when, you know, when you're dealing with a dangerous person like a crazy armed police officer. You want to de-escalate rather than escalate. Especially if he's already like on the path to escalate, because that's, you know, it's like it could be an armed cop, it could be a wild bear. You don't really want to mess with it. But at the same time, it's like there's, depending on who you are and what you've been through, I can understand like how it's completely different and how you completely react differently. There's I'll tell you a story. When I was in I had just moved to San Antonio, and I met with a friend, and I was walking him to his car. He's black. I was walking him to his car like at, I don't know, 2 or 3 in the morning. We were having a couple drinks, and just hanging out. And I'm walking him to his car, and around the corner, this sheriff comes on his bicycle, because, like, I guess he lived in the apartment building, so he was kind of off duty, but he was still in uniform, or I don't know if he was on duty and just fucking whatever. So he throws down his bicycle and he runs up to us, and he's like, "Who are you guys? What are you doing? What are you doing?" And we were just like, "What the hell's going on?" Like, this is my friend. I'm walking him to his car. Well, there have been a lot of break-ins around here, and he just started asking all these questions. And so, you know, he told us, you know, can you guys sit down on the curb? And like, this was actually before I started really getting pissed off and telling cops to go fuck themselves. But so we both sat down on the curb. Or actually, there were 3 of us, because he had another friend with him. We all sat down on the curb, and he asked us to lift up our shirts to see if we had any weapons. And so we did it, and I was just like, "This is fucking." I really wanted to say something like, "No, I'm not gonna do it. You're a piece of shit." But I didn't. I complied, and so, you know, this whole thing went on, and he ended up, you know, searching us, checking our pockets. All this shit went on for like a half an hour. He ended up searching my friend's car and just everything, just, you know. But after this was all over and the cop went away, I guess I did resist a little bit at one point. The cop, what did he like asked me if he could search me or something like that, and I just said no. You know, something real minor. And when I talked to my friend afterwards, he was like, "Dude, like, how could you say that to a cop?" Because he's just like, because he's a black man who's lived in, I mean, he lived a lot in Los Angeles and in Texas, and he's just like petrified of the police. Like, he would never say no. And that's the thing, when a cop asks you, "Can I search something?" that is your opportunity to say, "No, you cannot. I refuse to consent to that search." That's your opportunity. And if you say yes, that's when he has full legal access to find anything on you and use it against you in court. That's when you have to say no. And my friend there, just because of what he's been through, just because of the color that he is petrified to just say no, when, like, to exercise that right. And that is like, it's fucking insane. That shouldn't even be anything that goes through our heads. We should know, like, we should be taught in school, if a cop is asking you questions, shut the fuck up, don't say anything. If they ask you to search, say no. That's what we should be taught. Instead, I remember DARE officers telling me one time, "If you ever get arrested, don't ask for a lawyer because it makes you look guilty."
That's the training. When you talk about them training in school how to interact with the law enforcement, it's the same type of training. It's that indoctrination, getting people to just comply. Everything will go easier if you just comply. And that is the wrong message, and it's the wrong thing to do. And I think that there's a way to you know, resist without being physically resistant. And I think that complying is never in your best interest. other than physically complying, but never make a statement to the police. Never, and yeah, tell them you want a lawyer. And every single time, people are convicted based more on the words that they say and the things that they do after they're arrested, more than they are based on the actual circumstances of the case or anything that law enforcement could ever prove.
Yeah. It's a sick world we live in, man.
It absolutely is a sick. And the other thing is that I think that people should always do when you're interacting with law enforcement is you should record. Not just record, you should live stream. Every time, if you have any interaction with law enforcement, if you're pulled over because, you know, a traffic stop, you should be live streaming, because there will be a record of it out there. You know, I can't say forever, but you want the record to be out there. You don't want it to be something that, oh, you recorded on your phone, then they can take your phone and delete it. You want that to be out. You want people to see it live, and you want to tell them, look, you're live right now. You're live on YouTube, you're live on Facebook, whatever the case is, and let the officers know that there's other people watching. And then, frankly, if you got people, if you see that come up and you're watching a live stream and you see somebody being pulled over by the police, you want to tell people, hey, this is the department, this is where I'm at, this is the city I'm in. And people should be calling the police department, like, "Hey, we're watching," and let people know that that there are eyes on what they're doing, because it's really kind of the only way to hold them accountable and kind of make them think about what they're doing and how they actually behave. Some of them probably won't give a shit at all, but you still want to be able to have people watching in case something happens. You know, there will be at least some potential for accountability.
Yeah. Yeah, and get a dash cam. I mean, like, it's like, I think the when dash cams first really started getting popular, it was like, you know, all these places like Russia and China where you've got really bad drivers, and, you know, it's just like you can get hit at any moment. So everyone wanted to have these cameras in their car. Or in China, especially, people would do the insurance fraud thing. They'd just run up and jump on the hood of your car and try to say, you hit me, I need money. So they'd put dash cams in there, and this is when they got really popular. But it's like, do the same thing, because you never know, you know, especially like I don't know if they have them where you can hook them up to your cigarette lighter or something. I know with me, like my phone battery's always dead. So it's like if I ever get into a situation where I need to record something, it's like, oh shit, my battery's dead. You know, so maybe having a separate camera just to, you know, on standby, always be ready for that stuff. Because, I mean, you know, like I said, it's a sick world we live in. Like, you kind of always have to be vigilant and always be prepared, because you don't know, you're not going to have a warning when this happens. Like, you know, you might be driving past and see something and like, hey, stop and record it. You might just, like, out of nowhere, a cop pulls up behind you and pulls you over. You know, you just got to be ready at a moment's notice, because it can turn ugly fast. And just like Brian was saying, it's, you know, most of them are afraid to some degree. The I don't want to say the smart ones, but the relatively smart ones, are, you know, they are afraid to some degree, and you don't have to be an ass about it either. I was talking to a cop one time. He was asking me all these questions, and I was trying to be polite by answering, and then I realized, wait a minute, why am I answering these fucking questions? I'm just digging myself a hole. So I told him, like, hey, you know what? I really don't know how to answer all these questions, but if you want, I can get my lawyer on the phone. Not offensive, not I'm going to call my lawyer and he's going to rip you a new one. No, just like, hey, sorry, I don't know how to answer these questions. Should I call my lawyer and get him on the phone? And he just immediately went into, no, that's not necessary. You know, okay, yeah, wrote me a ticket and sent me on my way. So, you know, a little bit of, you know, non-aggressive resistance goes a long way too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you made a great point with the dash cam. I have a front and rear viewing dash camera that records all the time. And I also have a bracket set up, a phone holder that's up on the side of my car. So if I get pulled over, I can quickly put my phone in there, hit it on record, get on the live stream. So that I have multiple sources of recording my interactions, and really, again, I don't know if I can emphasize enough, letting the officer know you're being recorded. Like, there's people watching you right now. I think that is probably one of the best things you can do for your own safety.
Yeah, because then you know they're if you record them doing something bad, like planting something on you, then they know they're already screwed. They don't mind breaking a few more laws to get themselves out of it. They'll take your phone. They'll try to destroy it. They might beat you up and send you to jail and who knows what. So yeah, if you let them know right off the bat they're being recorded, then if they're up to no good, then they'll be on a little bit better behavior after that. They still might be dicks, but I think your chances are lower there. So we're coming up on time for tonight. Is there anything else, any other advice you want to give anyone who's maybe into cop watching, or anybody who finds themselves being unlawfully arrested for whatever type of civil disobedience?
I mean, the advice I would say to anybody who's a cop watcher out there, especially, is to just be prepared. When the police decide that they don't want you doing it anymore, they will jump through as many hoops as they can to get you to stop. And that's kind of what I've been up against. I've had, I've been arrested twice. They put pressure on my employer and I was fired. I went through, I've gotten all these strange conditions on my bond in different ways that I had police officers coming to my house and writing me tickets for parking on my lawn, which were misdemeanor offenses. And so I would just say that, be prepared, be ready that you're going to have to fight. You're going to have to take it to court. You're going to be attacked. And all this just for doing, providing a community service, especially. So, and for those of you that appreciate what cop blockers are doing, understand that it's fundamentally, I suppose it's a job. It's not an easy job. You put yourself, those guys are putting themselves out there all the time. And I can't right now because of my my probation and my bond restrictions. But if you appreciate what those people are doing and you think that they're providing a valuable service, you should support them. I would recommend supporting them in any number of ways that you can. Sharing their content, the stuff that they do. It's incredibly important, and it's that kind of work in conjunction with the work that we're doing with the Thin Blue Line that kind of to help change that the dynamic and kind of the paradigm where people hero worship these violent thugs for lack of a better term. And so it's those people that are on the front lines that are doing that work that are going to make the biggest difference. So yeah, if you can support those people, please reach out and support them in everything they're doing.
Awesome. All right. Well, you heard it here. Go check out thinbluelinegame.com. Go check out taxationstheft.cards. Go get some swag. Go get the game, and go support your local cop watchers. And always be prepared. And taxation is theft. All right. We'll see you guys next time.
All right. Peace. Thanks for having me on, Dan.
Taxation is theft.
Please, at least leave us alone in our living room.
My job is to find the truth.
Double the taxes. I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. Triple the taxes.
This is an IRS agent's dream.
If you think that the Capitol will ever treat us fairly, you are lying to yourself.
Beautiful, lovely taxes.
Sorry, but I don't do taxes.
Did you see the memo about this?
The government is a greedy piglet.
Just leave us alone.
Do you know what Ralph just said?
The roads.